Hey everybody, this is Sean Foster. I am the creator of the PXG Elements series. The element that I'm going to talk about today in this video is PXG Rock. And you can find PXG Rock on my website at emberintherain.com. It's $15 to buy. And the purpose of this video is I'm just going to kind of walk you through the different features in PXG Rock and how to use it. Now you will find PXG Rock up here in your plugins menu, and it'll be under the PXG Elements folder. Now I'm not going to go up into that menu because actually I have a bunch of other different elements that I've been working on up there, and I don't want to give away this surprise just yet. So what I've done is I've already added the PXG Rock to my scene. I've also added all of the 10 different rock textures that come with PXG Rock into my scene so that we can kind of play with them and see what we can create. Now I'm just going to zoom in on the rock a little bit here, and you can see that I've thrown a floor object in also. Now, with PXG Rock, you have essentially 3 tabs of different attributes that you can change. Now, I'm just going to slide this up so you can see everything. We'll start right here under the Object tab. Now, you can load presets. If you click on this button here, it will take you to a dialog, and then you go into the PXG Rock folder in your plugins menu, and there's a presets folder there, and you can load, there's a few presets that I've put in there, but you can also load any presets that you've saved from anywhere else. Okay, and you can see I've got Angry Birds on my computer. It's an addicting game. Okay, so you've also got a Save Presets button, and if you click that, anything you have in the scene right now will be saved in presets, or anything with the rock, rather. So if you click on Save Presets, it also opens up a dialog box, and you can save that preset anywhere you want. I recommend saving it in the PXG Rock folder, in the presets folder that's inside of there, just so that you have a set place to find it, but you know, it's limitless. You can put it wherever you want. The read-only option here, if you check that, then when you save a preset, it will be read-only, so you can't write over top of that. That's kind of handy if you've made a preset and it's a common name, because then you don't want to accidentally go back and save over the preset you've made before. So that option is there if you need it. Now, under this Object tab, there's a Basic Shape option here. And you have 6 different things to choose from. You start with a sphere. That's the default. So when you're looking at right now, this object is based on a sphere. Okay, and you can choose cube, so it will make a cubic rock. And I'm just going to reduce these divisions here so you can see it. We'll go even smaller. There you go. And if I zoom in on this like that, you can see that the rock is kind of cubic in shape. Okay. Also, you have a cone. Now, when you first add the cone, this option down here becomes available, this bottom and top radius for the cone. And the cone is based on the size option here. So if you change the height, change it to like 200, then you will actually get a taller cone. Okay. But what it does is it starts off with the default at 75 height. So when you change it to a cone, you end up with kind of a flat, almost looks like a melting rock. Okay, so that's a cone, and you can also choose a pyramid, and then you zoom in here, and you get a pyramid shape. And you can also choose a platonic. That is the platonic primitive from C4D. Your rock is kind of based on that original shape. Okay, and you can also choose other. Now, if you choose other, all of a sudden your rock disappears. So you have to go up here and choose any object. Okay, so why don't we say we'll go with the torus object, and I'm just going to reduce the size of that a little bit. All right, and go back to your PXG rock, and you drop the torus into that rock object, and it creates a rock based on that object. Now you have to keep the object in the scene, but you can just hide it. Okay, and then now you have a rock that's based on that original object. Okay, so those are the different basic shapes that you can do with this, and I'm going to go back to sphere, and I'm just going to get rid of that torus. We don't need that anymore. Now, those are the basic shapes that you can choose, and these options right here are only used with a cone, so they're not available when you don't have a cone chosen. Now, the size option here changes the size of the rock itself, so you can adjust this. Okay, the first parameter is the x-axis, the second parameter is the y-axis, and the third parameter is the z-axis. So you can adjust these however you want. Let's say you want to make your rock 200 wide. We'll make it 95 tall, and let's say 150 deep. Okay, so you can adjust the size of these however you want. And then the basic subdivision here. Basic subdivision is the amount of polygons per side. Okay, so if you adjust this, it's going to give you more polygons in the shape. Now, post subdivision is like adding a hyperNURBS object to it. Okay, so if I took this off, let's see, if I drop that down to 0, you could see that if I set this to 4, okay, then I would have 4, or sorry, I would have very little polygons, right? Okay, and the more I increase this, the more polygons I'm going to get. Okay, now if I add post subdivision, if I increase that, it's as if I've added a hyperNURBS object to it, so it does hyperNURBS subdivision. Okay, now the last option under the Objects tab is Triangulate, and there are a lot of programmers out there who do 3D for video games, and then there are a lot of video game engines that require that the object is triangles. So the Triangulate option, if you check that, it turns your object into triangles. Now, notice that that's with no subdivisions. Okay, so if you turn the hyperNURBS off, you can see that it's actually triangles. Okay, so that's what Triangulate does. And then I'm just going to add that back in. I'm going to take my basic subdivisions back up to 60 because that's the default. I'm just going to kind of default these back out so that you can see the other options as we go. Oops. Okay, so as I mentioned before, when you add the rock object, it gives you kind of a basic shape because all of these features in here have default values in there. So this is kind of the basic shape you get. Now, if you go into the Noise tab, the Noise tab is basically what is creating the overall rock-like shape. Okay. First of all, you have this strength option here, and if you increase the strength, what you're increasing is the intensity of the noise and how it affects the object. So higher values, so like let's go way up to 300. Okay, you can see that you can really tell that there's a lot of noise on that rock now, a lot of bumpiness, a lot of changes in shape. Okay, so the higher you increase this, the more intense that noise looks on the rock. Okay, let's drop that back to 50 again. And the offset now, if you increase this, basically what is happening is it's increasing the diameter of the rock. It's increasing the distance of how the noise affects the rock from the center. Okay, so as you increase the offset, the rock will get larger, and it will appear to be less affected by the noise. Okay, so we'll just drop that back to 0. I'm just kind of going through these and then setting them back to their default so you can keep seeing what we're doing. Now the crumple feature is the more you increase this, the more crumpled the rock will look. And if I just kind of get rid of those, you can see it doesn't look that crumpled. It looks kind of smooth still. So if I increase this, let's say up to 50, now you can see that my rock looks a lot more crumpled. Okay, so that's handy if you really want your rock, you want the geometry of your rock to look more distorted and crumpled. I keep it down at 1 because sometimes it's better to rely on the materials to do that, because you don't want too much geometry in the scene, of course, because it will slow things down. So I like to rely on the materials a lot to do the more detailed stuff. Okay, time. Now this value right here is, if you've ever played with noise in shaders, you know that you can animate the noise. Okay, well the time value is basically a step through time as if you had animated the noise. So if you increase this value, and I'm just going to hold it down and let it increase. Well, let's go 100. Oh, whoops, sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. The time value actually only works on the detail layer. Okay, so when I talk about the detail layer, I'll come back to the time value. So for now, I'll just leave it 0. Now, random. Random is kind of cool because as you change this number, what's going to happen is your rock is going to take on random shapes. Okay, and it really doesn't matter what direction you change this number. As you change it, you will get random different rocks. Okay, so changing this value will kind of take you through a whole cycle of different random rocks. Okay, so if you're looking for a little randomization in the rock, then that's a good place to start. You can kind of bump around and find one you like, and then adjust all the different values to change its shape. Now the mix amount. The mix amount is how the original shape and the noise is kind of being mixed together. Okay, if you go all the way up to 100%, it's not being mixed. It's just the original shape. Okay, but if you go above or below that, it begins to mix the noise. You begin to see more or less of the noise. Okay, and it's just going in different directions. All right, so I'm going to just bring that back up. And it's a handy little feature. It gives you a greater control over how much you want the noise to affect the shape of the rock, and or how little you want it to. Now, when we come down into this little area here, this is the noise. This is the general noise. This is the general shape of the rock. You have 3 different options in here. You have turbulence, wavy turbulence, and noise. Now, turbulence is the default. This is kind of like a bumpy looking rock. If you go to wavy turbulence, you can see it's a little more flowing. It's larger. It's kind of bigger waviness. Okay, and then if you go to noise, okay, it's really, really subtle. Okay, so I make turbulence the default because it kind of gives it a more rocky look. Wavy turbulence will, if you adjust some of these values down here, they will all take on a different shape as you adjust these values. Now the first value is the scale. And by scale, I mean the scale of the noise that's being affecting that sphere that this rock is based on. Okay, so if I change the scale, this is the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis. The more I increase this scale, the more it's going to affect that axis. Okay, so if you look at the x-axis, let's bring this up to like 3. You can see that as I increase this, there's more waviness along the x-axis. Okay, and if I make, I'm just going to show you how it's working, I'm going to set some of these to 0 so that you can actually see full on the effect that's happening. Okay, this is all noise being added to the x-axis now. Okay, and if I increase this, you'll see that more waves are kind of coming in and being added. All right, now if I do the same thing here, I'll make that 0, and I go to the y-axis and we'll make that 4. You can see that the waves are being added to the y-axis. Oops, I'm below the floor. Okay, and also, just can't leave the z-axis out. Let's set that to 3. You can see that the waves are added to the z-axis. Now, as you blend these, okay, let's set these back to their defaults real quick. 0.5, oops, 0.5, 1, and 0.5. Okay, you can see that when you blend those numbers together, it kind of creates waviness and bumpiness all over the rock and in different directions. So that's why you get this rocky look.